we'll get out of the way the minutes, previous meeting.
Need a motion to accept them? Okay, Ron, in a second.
Dick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ryan's gonna walk us through, Barbara and Judith is here. There's been a couple rethoughts and stuff like that on the facility, and they want to run by the committee to look at, so.
So, in June, we talked about upgrades to the solid waste facility, and Barton and LaJudas provided us with 3 options. Option 1, option 2A, and option 2B. Option 1 was to renovate our existing facility. That was decided pretty much by the committee that didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we moved on to options 2A and 2B, which were for new buildings. So here's 2A, which was a new building in the back, and it had the retaining wall here. Then option 2B was slightly more expensive because it had the retaining wall in the back. But for both of these options, 2A and 2B, the trucks had to come in, and then you can see here the diagram, they'd have to back in and dump and then come out, okay? And the committee said at that time, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could come up with a drive-through option. So we went back to B&L and Chad, who's with us today, and we asked them to come up with some drive-through options. And so what we have here is option, let me make sure I'm looking at the right one, 2C, which you've got the cost, I costed out on your spreadsheet here. Option 2C is a separate building, just like we talked about before, except for this time, the trucks can come in and drive through and around and out, okay? And then Kip and Chad were talking, and they said, you know, wouldn't it be really nice if we could increase our efficiency by creating a drive-through building that was right adjacent to our recycling building. That way the loader can run back and forth in between doors, and it can push over the recycling into the compactor, and then run right back over and push the garbage into the open top trailer that we're gonna have. So this was the option 2D that I know Kip prefers, but that's where we are today. Is we wanted to talk, make sure everybody was on the same page, and hopefully agree on one of these options, option 1 through 2D, to move forward, get engineered, and hopefully we can get it bid out for spring construction next year. So the features of this option 2D are same concept as before. It'll be an open tip floor, except for now the trucks can come in. They come in here off 26. They hit the scales, right? They drive up, and they can drive right through the tipping floor, open their containers, drop it, and then drive right out and back out onto 26 and out back onto the highway. Now there's a separate lane here for our open top trailer, because this is going to be, I think, about 9 feet. What was the amount? About 9 feet lower, right? So the trucks are coming in onto a tipping floor, dumping, and then we're going to push with a loader down into the open top container. So now we'll hook up to the open top container, and we'll drive straight out right on to 26. So this option slightly more expensive, but it really, we feel, hits all of our needs. And so with that, we'll leave it up to discussion, but these are basically the 2 new options that we came up with that were drive-through options, option 2D and option 2C, which is a separate building with a drive-through option. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jerry to lead any questions, discussion you guys have. Chad from B&L is here with us, so he can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ryan. Now that we're a little bit totally confused here with the add-ons, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
What's the increase in cost, basically?
You should have a folder or a paper.
$250,000.
It'll take it up from C about $400,000 or $500,000.
Ended up 200,000.
Yeah, you're going from 1.861 million to 2.118 million. Yeah,
But they put 400,000 in.
right, either way. Yeah.
So essentially, at first, when I looked at it, Ryan sent me a copy last night because Chad was coming in for a little bit to get us familiar with it. The recyclable building, I thought they combined before, and we want to keep the old garbage site, excuse me, where we used to push it on the floor and put it in the compactor, separated from the public, because the public will still use that. So what we talked about, one of my concerns was combining the old building and the new building, but what's going to happen is both buildings are going to be standalone, because on the recycling side, depending how it goes, we're at a larger capacity than we were before, and we probably grow with time, even into a larger one. But the buildings will be blended together, so it looks like it's one building, but both of them are freestanding. So in other words, they may be this far apart, and they'll just put a panel across it, so it looks like one continuous building. And what that would allow to do, if something ever needs to be done there, you can separate it, do your renovations and stuff without affecting the other one. Larry?
So, what, are we keeping the old dump, where you dump recyclables for general public use?
No, it'd be where they bring the garbage in now, the trucks, they used to share the same floor. Ryan, can you hit that one again?
Yep. So
That
this,
one there.
yeah, the public, so this is our existing garbage building. If you are a commercial hauler or a residential person, you come in off 26 and you back in here and you dump, right?
Right.
What we're doing is we're gonna divert all commercial traffic, hit the scales down around to this new building. This building will be just for residential only. So they can come in, dump, and come out, same entrance.
Okay, so
This, yeah, and then this recycling is here, yeah.
So, I thought one of the purposes was to get rid of the dump off boxes. If you utilize that old building, you're still gonna have dump boxes.
So all we're gonna use this building for is to imagine like a town transfer station. You go in there and you can throw your garbage in one, metal in one, cart, you know what I mean? We're gonna get rid of the compactor and everything. It's just gonna be an area with dumpsters where a residential person can come in and throw their garbage into a bin.
And then they transfer.
And then we'll drive it into here, dump it just like everybody else, and put it in our big open top.
Oh,
Is that right, Kip?
That's correct.
And then the recycle building would still be where it is now, but there'd be, between the two buildings where they hit together, on the side there'd be an overhead door where they could travel into the other facility, move back and forth to load. So they might be able to do it with one piece of equipment and it keeps them out of the yard where trucks will be coming in and people, by being able to travel back and forth through there.
So this is our recycling building here. And if you imagine our recycling building, the trucks come in, they dump onto a flat floor, then we have a loader that that loads it down into a compactor that drops it into a box that's down here, right? So that same loader that is doing that work will be able to come over here now. A commercial truck comes in, dumps, it'll be able to load it and push it right down into the open top. So this will be one floor that is even, that the loader can go back and forth. It'll push down recycling down into here and push down garbage down into here. And it's the drive-through element that was what the committee was looking for in June, so that the trucks aren't backing in and coming back out. Now they drive right through and right back where they came from.
so the new recycling will still utilize a open top trailer back along the bottom side of that drawing. There'll be an open top trailer there.
For recycling?
Yes.
No, check, Kip, you're still using the compactor for recycling. For
We're
at
getting
least
rid of the
time
garbage
being.
compactor to put the garbage into the open top.
You're gonna be using that for recycling because of the quantity.
Correct.
We can get more in a trailer.
We,
See, we're hauling it, as far as we're hauling it, what are you getting? You said roughly
between
18 to
17
20
and 20
ton?
ton.
Where with just packing it in there loosely, it's,
You're not getting the weight.
Okay.
If we went to an open top of the recycling, it wouldn't be worth your trips. You
Right.
gotta compact it to make it worth the labor and the equipment.
Okay.
So,
Hey Kip, how soon is Harrisville gonna be open?
Right now, the way it sounds, they're gonna have us hauling. Right now, they're gonna pay us to haul the recycling from our facility. So it doesn't make us a lot of sense to take it to Harrisville, compact it again, and then bring it past our facility.
Right.
They said we might better do it, and they'll pay us to haul it. So that's some money we're gonna be making.
so we're gonna be
saving.
heading the same direction as we are now for a while.
St. Lawrence County changed the amount of volume they wanted to send to the Development Authority. So when they increased their volume, Casella backed off. The county took up more up there. So basically, right now, Harrisville facility is a St. Lawrence County transfer station. So we're doing the same thing that we were doing, except for now the Development Authority's paying us. So really, we didn't lose out, but we could have freed up more man hours, but we're getting paid, so.
And then only other thing we talked about down by the scales, it was there, we're talking about doing a,
Office.
office for our employees, our bathrooms, break room. It'd be on a slab and stuff like that. What we'd like is further discussion with the committee and stuff like that, whether we're gonna go stick-built, modular, and a few other things. So when we get done today, if everybody's in agreement, that will be coming back to us, but we would like to get the other part of the project going so we can get the design and stuff. And then when they get to around 95% of the design, they'll bring it back for us to look at and critique and stuff, see if there's any more changes we need done, and get it out to bid when we feel the right time, which would be, around right after Christmas or so. We seem to be doing pretty good in that time frame. And if they get it done before Christmas, we could put it out.
You can't just use one of the sheds from, you can't use one of the sheds from Malvin's Court Farm, which is insulated.
For the
Just
bill, well,
I can be Kip's office.
I asked that question. We need quite a few sheds. See, we gotta get to around 750 square feet. Because it was a pretty good price tag with it, so we're questioning whether we can end up with a good building or better.
We budgeted,
Being stick built.
we put in, Barton and Judas put in, so in this calculation here is 142,500 for some type of office scale house that can go right here. So the only thing about this building being adjacent is our break room's down here now and the bathroom's down there, and we'd obviously have to move the septic storage tank. So that would, it just, we wanted to do an office scale house anyway, because right now the public has to walk up these metal steps to get up to the office. So if we're gonna do it, let's do something nice that's right at ground level. People can pop in, get their tickets. And then we can have an office with bathrooms there, so that'll all kind of be under one roof.
But that money's already in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't, actually, it's less. We had it in at 160, and Chad's team came back and said you could probably get it done for 142.5.
Is there any other questions? Andrew?
I'm good.
Any want to go ahead and tentatively get ready to move forward for design? With this one, are we satisfied with this design?
I would make a motion that we go ahead with this design.
Second. Ron? Dick?
Which design is it specifically?
This is option 2D for a budget of
$1,998,000 roughly.
yeah, I want to make sure we're using the, I don't want to include the equipment costs. Give me 1 second.
That's 2.118, right?
2.11 something, I think it's like something.
It is $1,898,000. 1,898.
Where's that coming from?
That's from the report. So the number that you're seeing here is inclusive of all the equipment, which is separate purchases.
So what's the real dollar amount again, please?
The real for this project is $1,898,000.
My sheet's got 1,598.
Well, that's because I took
That's
out.
just to be borrowed, okay.
Yeah, that's too far up. And I took out the 142.5 as a separate breakout.
Okay.
So you can see the office scale room. So if you're looking for it on this sheet, take the 17555 and add the 1425 to it. I just broke out the scale house.
Okay. Yep.
Because we've been looking at it separately all along. So,
Yep. Thanks, Ryan.
yeah.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carried.
Chad, you're good?
Thank you, Chad, appreciate it. Other presentations?
Joan, can you give an intro?
Yeah, so we're moving on to something under recreation, forestry, and parks. Last year, I attended one of the NISAC conferences and sat in on a seminar from the Nature Conservancy and ways for counties to possibly develop some revenue from their reforestation properties. So in your packet that I gave to you today, a handout, we have Gabe Chapin, I think his name is, from the Nature Conservancy, who Jackie and I worked with to examine our reforestation lands to see if it's worthwhile for the board to consider whether or not we want to enter into this potential carbon credit woodland project that they're offering not only to individuals but to counties. So there's Gabe. I'm going to put the light on right now.
You want the light on?
Yeah.
We got to turn up the volume. I just heard him very low.
We're working on the volume, Gabe.
This is where I'm
There you go. That's worse? Is that worse?
This works.
Gabe, say something. Now,
We need Doug, I don't know. He
Where'd
was-
Doug go? Could somebody call Doug?
That's all I know, but if it
Where the speakers are up in the ceiling. See if you can.
He can hear us.
Yeah, but he was gonna walk us through some of
is, I
this.
mean, yes, he has his own.
Because our system's not on.
Yeah. It didn't, here. Right here. Bear with us a minute, Gabe, we're gonna try to get the volume figured out.
Caitlin, there's another speaker down below.
Is it tied in your computer though?
Can you email Doug and tell him to come up? Doug would know.
He was standing right out back there.
Just have Kayla, somebody run into Kayla, call me real quick.
Did you get him up? Okay, thanks. Just coming up. So, Gabe, I'm gonna fill the board in a little bit since you can hear us, and then when we get the sound better, you'll be able to answer some of their questions. So if you look at the sheet that we gave you that Dave worked up, he initially took all of the maps that Jackie sent to him and looked at our properties, and they can somehow give an estimate of what our forested properties can generate in terms of projected carbon credits that go to other corporations that are responsible to meet certain green energy requirements. So they can pay for carbon credits to meet environmental responsibilities by paying, actually the Nature Conservancy, who would then pay us as the landowners for a certain amount of money for what those credits provide to the corporations. And I'm probably botching it up really bad, Dave, but you'll straighten it out. But the interesting thing is that we have over 3,300 acres of reforestation land that we can't really do anything with other than to maintain and harvest. We do have our trails run through some of it, which we can all retain those rights, but the Nature Conservancy, there we go. Gabe, you want to say something? Try it again. No. I wonder if we ought to just go on audio.
Is it tied into which computer? Is the speaker connected to that computer?
Did you call the speakerphone just video?
Yeah. Dave, we can, if you give me a cell phone number, we can at least get you on conference call if we can't get the voice through the Zoom. So if you want to send Jackie a cell phone number or a number,
She's got it.
we'll call you. Okay.
His cell phone number is 914.
What if I change it to this?
Okay, let's just do it by conference call.
Yeah, Gabe, say something before you hang up.
Yep, not working. Jackie, you want to give me that number?
914 772 4304.
Okay, can you hear me on my phone?
Oh, much better.
Okay, sounds good.
Can everybody hear? Anybody make that louder?
There we go. Sounds good. So can you still see the screen, actually? If you've got me on there, and
We
it's
can.
not too distracting, I can just sort of pull up the slides that I was planning to show here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so now you're looking at my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I know, it's going to be a fairly busy presentation, so I'll kind of skip a little of the intro, and thank you, Joan, for kind of going through that a little bit. I think what's probably the most useful is for me to kind of skip ahead to some of the parts of the projects that are specific to Lewis County. I guess what I might do is just kind of give you guys some context for what the program is and how it sort of works. So we call this type of forest carbon project where we work with a landowner, working woodlands, and really the reason for that is because it's exactly that. These are properties where, landowners are actively managing their forests, whether it's for timber, recreation, other, landowner goals, and our goal is to work, in partnership with the landowner to help them meet these management goals, hopefully improve the quality of their forest over time, and also generate some revenue for them through forest carbon markets. So as trees, every day the trees are out there, they're sucking in carbon dioxide, they're using it to make wood, and about half of every tree that you see is actually carbon that's been pulled in out of the atmosphere. So they store a lot of carbon, and it's really important for us in terms of meeting our conservation goals. When we do this, and if we're able to work with a landowner to increase the amount of carbon that they're storing in their trees, we can then take that additional carbon to the market. We do it in the voluntary carbon market. So these are corporations and individuals that are looking to offset some portion of their emissions or offset their carbon footprint. A lot of companies now are really building this right into their business model. As right now, there's actually a significant sort of unmet demand, and we anticipate the next few years with additional programs that are coming out, there will continue to be a lot of demand for these types of offset credits. And then we also, these projects, the third major component is usually some type of forest protection. So if we're engaging in a project, we want to make sure that, at the end of that project, that forest stays as forest and it stays a sustainably managed forest into the future. So with a typical landowner, private landowner, oftentimes this is in the form of like a working forest conservation easement, just based on county ownership and the nature of that. I don't think that's the right solution for a county, and I think there's more conversation to be had for us to better understand, what kind of current protections are currently in place on county land, and what the needs are, and come up with a good solution there. So the Lewis County assessment that we did, so Joan touched on this a little bit, so it was I'd say very preliminary assessment. We looked at about 3,300 acres. We looked at some satellite data, some aerial imagery, and we're able to compare that to similar projects that we've assessed. And what we project is about $500,000 in revenue to Lewis County over 10 years. So this is after all the project expenses are covered. This is just net revenue to the county. And we project it over a 10-year period for 2 years. One, based on the carbon market protocols, that's just when the majority of the revenue comes in. And also, we have a lot of confidence. We can look, this is a market-based type of approach. So there has to be a viable market, there has to be demand and good pricing for credit. And over a 10-year window, we're very confident there, but we don't want to try to project out, a 40-year revenue stream where we have less confidence. In 25 years, we don't know what the market's going to be. So we want you to make a decision based on what we feel is the most kind of conservative project scenario that we're confident in. There is the opportunity to generate additional revenue over that entire 40-year carbon project. That's sort of, if you sold a carbon credit today, you're obligated to maintain that carbon in your forest over the entire 40 years of the carbon project. So the way that revenue comes in, it's not sort of like perfectly regulated, again, it's sort of market-based. So as we sell credits, then we just sort of pay the bills, the expenses, and then redirect revenue back to the landowner kind of in real time. So we can do, if there's interest in sort of pursuing the project further, understanding better what the revenue stream would look like, we would organize an actual kind of on-the-ground inventory and measurement. It would be sort of a rapid assessment, but measurement of actual trees on the forest land that the county owns, and sort of generate a much more detailed kind of financial projection for the county of what that might look like. I guess another kind of important point that's specific to this project, this could be potentially just a standalone carbon project. It would be a very small project. So typically these projects would be in the tens, sometimes the hundreds of thousands of acres. So this is pretty small by carbon market standards, and it would probably be more likely to be viable if it was grouped together. So what you can do is called aggregation. We can take several other counties that have expressed interest, sort of group your properties together into one project. And from the standpoint of the landowner, there's not a lot of difference. From the standpoint of developing the project and bringing it to market, there's a lot of efficiency there. So it actually generates potentially more revenue to each individual landowner by bundling them together into one project. And we've talked to a number of counties, Otsego, Oswego, Jefferson County, Erie County, Essex County, and there's a lot of interest in this. And we're having these same types of conversations with a number of counties sort of right now. So I think that would be the best type of approach to a project for this county as well. Just a little bit of detail, and I don't want to go into too much because I know we're a little pressed for time, but just sort of how it works generally speaking. The Nature Conservancy takes on all the project development responsibility. So we cover all the upfront costs. We work with a third-party project developer to sort of do all the behind-the-scenes work that has to go into bringing this to market. If that means providing a new forest management plan for the county lands, we would do that as well as part of the expense. And we provide third-party sustainable forest certification as well, which is necessary for the carbon market. The Nature Conservancy, I think this is, these next two points here, really important, and I think really are the benefits of working with the Nature Conservancy on a project like this as opposed to just going directly to some kind of project developer trying to develop it on your own. So we handle all the marketing and sales of the carbon credits, and because of we're doing a lot of this in the voluntary market space, these projects wouldn't be viable in a compliance market like California market. It would just be too small and it's too onerous, the requirements of that market. So we are able to connect directly with corporations, with individuals in the voluntary market space, and because of our brand and recognition, actually get a premium on the pricing. And so we work sort of hand in hand with a lot of developers because we're able to sell the credit much more easily and for better pricing than the developers typically do. And then also the project itself is 40 years long, and there's responsibilities throughout that 40-year project term to remeasure the carbon that's out there and do continual sort of audits or verifications of the project. And that can get expensive. And if we're not generating revenue to cover those costs in years 25 through 40, and we're not selling credits anymore, the Nature Conservancy is committed to ensuring that those costs are covered, even if we have to do it out of pocket. So that's normally fully the responsibility of the landowner. The last kind of point I'll just make about sort of the market and how it's set up. There are some landowner protections in place. If there's a pest outbreak, a disease outbreak, wildfire, storm damage, whatever it is, that's out of the control of the landowner, there's a built-in insurance mechanism to the carbon market that kind of covers that. So the landowner's not on the hook for something that's completely out of their control. And just this last slide, there's a lot of information here. One point to make, I'd say, is that this is not a fast process. If this is something the county wanted to pursue, this would be the first of sort of many conversations to go through the details, develop some agreements, and from sort of day one, like today, this initial conversation, to when we actually are able to hand you a check, to be anywhere from 24 months to kind of at the outside would be 36 months. So this is the time it takes to, develop the agreement, develop the project structure with the landowner, and then as we take it to market, and then we have to wait, we can't make trees grow any faster. We actually have to wait until the carbon credits themselves become real, and those trees have grown, and then you're able to actually go out and verify that and sell it. So there is quite a lag But then after that point in time, generally you can expect revenue to be coming in on a fairly regular basis over that first 10-year period. So that's it in terms of what I had as kind of a presentation. I'm certainly available if you want to ask questions and answer any questions that you have now, or if you have any kind of follow-up discussions that might be helpful.
Okay, Gabe, we do have a couple of questions, so, Larry, go ahead.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you pretty good, yeah.
So are we essentially selling the development rights on this property? Or giving, selling the development rights as an easement? I assume this is a perpetual easement forever, or is this a fix?
So the way this is set up, for my understanding of the properties is that they're all county reforestation ones. So they're subject to the county law, I believe it's 219, which is specific to county forest land. And so from a development standpoint, it's already very limited in terms of what you can do with the property. The carbon market is a 40-year project. So you're required, if you engage in the carbon market, you're required to maintain that carbon stocking on the property for 40 years. And the Nature Conservancy, so if we're coming into a project, we do want to make sure that at the end of that 40-year period, that there isn't the potential for a project to get sort of reversed through some large-scale convergence, which is already limited based on my understanding of these properties. But we want to just take a look at that and make sure that if we're engaging that, there's a long-term benefit there as well.
So we can't do anything with reforestation properties anyway. We can't sell that property. It would have to go back to the state.
That's my next question. Can we sell an easement on the property in the first place?
I don't know.
Well, yeah.
My concern
Yeah,
is.
so there, what we sort of talked about, and again, this is, I think, I would need sort of a better understanding of sort of all the implications of county ownership. I don't understand it quite well enough, but what I don't think is that a conservation easement, the way that we typically think of it, is the right solution or would be part of this project.
But the easement that we would be giving you is a fixed life easement and not a perpetual easement.
I don't think it's an easement.
Yeah,
It's not-
and
yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's an easement. What we'd be doing is essentially taking on, what we'd essentially be getting from the county is the title to the carbon credit, right? And then it's sort of on the landowner to then maintain the carbon at the level that we sold it. So there's no actual easement. It's really just about sort of us being able to take that carbon and have the right to sell it on your behalf or retire those credits on your behalf.
Right, and so also, Gabe, what we talked about, Larry, and this might help, is that Jackie and I were certainly very concerned that we retain the right to develop recreational trails and other kinds of recreational things on the property, which Dave indicated he didn't foresee that as being a problem because we're not really taking away a lot of the trees in order to have those trails, and we'll be able to maintain the carbon credit, presence there, essentially.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, there's an expectation going in that, things like trails or the way that Jackie had described it, which I thought was a really smart way to go about it too. When timber operations are happening, you're utilizing the skid trails and the roads as recreational trails. And that's all sort of expected to be, part of this project. So, and we can actually build in a certain amount of timber harvesting to the project so that, that's accounted for at the front end, and we help you kind of implement that in a sustainable way. So,
Gabe, can you discuss how it will impact our normal harvest schedule and how strict it will be to the plan you develop for harvest schedule?
So what we do at the front end, so I would probably sit down with you and work with you to figure out what your sort of plans are, looking forward as far as timber harvesting. The key is that you're just not harvesting to the point where you're actually cutting carbon credits that have been sold, essentially. So your forest is growing over time. And as long as you're sort of staying within that forest growth over time, there's actually quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how you want to manage within that. Obviously, if you're harvesting a little bit less timber, you're generating a little bit less carbon revenue, but you're able to kind of put those two revenue streams together. And any timber harvesting that you do is that's revenue that the county gets to keep. There's no sharing of that revenue or anything like that. You're able to continue to manage that property, generate that income. What you would be subject to is some kind of third-party sustainable certification, which really would apply to things like roads and following best management practices and things that you're probably already doing anyway.
Gabe, let's say it's 2050 and Ian and I are ready to retire from Lewis County. And things have changed in New York State, and there's a boon of development in upstate, and people really want to be up here, and the county owns this land that could be used for future development. I mean, how would that
By law,
work?
you cannot.
Whose law?
New York State
New
law.
York State law, because it's classified reforestation land, it can only be given to the state.
Well,
You
laws
cannot
can
develop
change.
it.
I mean,
That-
a local
yes.
forestation law can change, the state's law can change. I'm saying 35 years from now, and we're locked into this still. I just want to make sure we understand the implications of, a big chunk of Lewis County being undevelopable.
So, it gets back to the question of, understanding what your needs are, understanding what our needs are. I mean, what we typically do, and just, want to be sort of clear and transparent as possible, with a private landowner, that's kind of the exact situation that we're looking to avoid, right? Is that we go through this, we engage in a carbon market, the Nature Conservancy puts a lot of, energy and resources into these projects, and so we are expecting that landowner to, engage in some kind of easement or something that does protect their property, because, we don't want to just go through this carbon project period and then immediately, help the landowner generate a lot of revenue, help them improve their property, and then have them immediately go and reverse that. In this instance, with these county lands, as Joan said, there's already that limitation in place. I suppose it's possible that those laws could change, but at this point in time, that's what I would use as sort of the benchmark, is that county law.
If we did want to develop 20 years from now, is there a payback of the carbon credits?
Yeah, so what we talked about, the insurance mechanism, basically for unforeseen circumstances or things that are out of your control, that's called what we call an unintentional reversal of the project. You decided you needed to do something with this property and there was an intentional reversal, then essentially what you're doing is having to pay back or replace all the credits that, because you're essentially taking all those credits and all that carbon stored is now being released, and you need to replace that because they've already been sold.
What would be unintentional, like a forest fire or something?
Yeah, forest fire. I think the thing that most people worry about is kind of insect or disease outbreaks or really bad storm damage that causes a lot of damage to the forest.
What is our responsibility like for disease and stuff like that? I mean, red rot and bugs and stuff like that. I mean, if we got to go in and attempt to spray them and keep them under control, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we certainly build that into. So we help you develop a forest management plan. We can build that into the forest management plan. If there's a lot of mortality that's associated with it, like trees dying, and there's credits that need to be replaced, that's covered sort of through the insurance mechanism. As far as what you can do to manage for that pest, I mean, everybody involved in the project wants to see that forest in as good a shape in 40 or 60 or 100 years from now as it can be. So if there's management that needs to happen, that's beneficial to the project. There's no, built-in restrictions sort of within the realm of what would be, sound management. So, spraying prohibited chemicals, is one thing, but going out and using, an approved pesticide or something like that to deal with an insect pest is totally acceptable.
And carbon footprint and stuff like that, what you do, with our full acreage, you take a percentage that you sell, or do you take the full amount? Because if we're, say, in a logging project or management, we're taking out so much a year, the trees are not going to grow that quick, are they? As far as replace the carbon footprint?
You'd be surprised. I'm trying to think of the numbers. So we've done a project with the Albany Water Board in their watershed lands, which is like 4,500 acres. And I think we built into their project over 100,000 board feet a year, or something like 100,000 board feet a year on that property. That was sort of what we said is, we built that into the model, because that's sort of the expectation of timber harvesting on this property. And they could even potentially go well above that. I think that was like something like 25% of their forest growth on an annual basis over 4,000 acres. So you can, your trees are out there and growing, and hopefully if you're doing good management, you should also be increasing the rate at which your nice trees are growing, and actually can be beneficial to the forest.
Thank you.
Could you expand your program to include the state land inside the blue line?
So the state lands inside the blue line, so they're not really eligible, because in order to show that you're doing something that's increasing carbon stocking or storage on the property, you have to be able to demonstrate something different than kind of business as usual, right? So the state cannot harvest their timber inside the blue line, so then there's no additional carbon benefit to enrolling the property in a project, right? There's no additional management benefit that they could do inside there because they're not allowed to harvest their timber in the first place. So really, to be one of the key eligibility criteria is that you're actually legally and from a practical standpoint able to go in and harvest timber. So other state lands outside of the blue line where they do active management would be potentially eligible for carbon projects.
Gabe, I had a question on talking about a grouped project. If Lewis County started out on its own, can a group with other counties be formed later down the line? And do we have to be contiguous to those counties?
So to answer your second question, no. So you don't have to be contiguous to be grouped into one project. And there are, traditionally when you do an aggregation project, and this varies, you might hear slightly different things because things vary. There's different carbon registries and there's different rules depending on whose marketplace you want to sell in. Things vary slightly, but pretty much across the board, the typical approach would be to get everybody together at one time, enroll them, and then that's a project for that 40-year term. One of the developers we work with called Spatial Informatics Group has worked on a new protocol with the American Carbon Registry, which is the one that we typically use. And it's to do just that. It's to set it up so that if you have, say, a county, 2 counties, 3 counties that are ready now, they can move forward. And if you want to bring in several more in a year or two, or bring additional properties into that project over time, you can do that. So that's sort of under development, but that's definitely the last update I heard, and I should be getting another one, I believe, tomorrow, is that that was moving forward and should be in place before too long. That's definitely the model that we would look to.
What is the financial benefit of combining with other counties?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? That was just a little faint.
He asked, what's the financial benefit of combining with other counties?
Sure. So when you're developing a project, there's certain costs that are based on, how many credits you're generating, and, 18 cents of every credit has to go to the registry to cover costs there. So those, you don't gain any benefit. But there are some things like the actual carbon inventory, where if you double the size of your project, you're not doubling the size of the inventory that has to happen every 5 or so years. So roughly every 5 years, somebody's got to go out there and measure all the trees and make sure that this is actually the carbon is being stored and sort of verify it. So those costs increase a lot more slowly, than the project size does. So you gain a lot of efficiency there because those inventories are quite expensive, and the verification. So there's a third party that comes in and essentially does an audit on the whole project. And if your project, maybe it goes up slightly if you have a bigger project, but not very much. So there's just costs that are more or less fixed, whether you're talking about a project that's 10,000 acres or 100,000 acres. And so the larger the project, you just get that economy of scale in terms of the development.
Gabe, we're talking about a 40-year commitment. The revenue that you're projecting is just over the first 10 years. And that's only an estimate. What happens year 11 through 40? Do we get money in those years?
So, again, it's sort of based on the market, right? So we can project, we're very confident in this sort of 10-year period. I see nothing to indicate that after 20 years it wouldn't be there, but when we start getting way out there, it becomes very hard to predict, right? So the option is there to sell credits. You can sell credits throughout the life of the project. It's not going to generate the same level of revenue on an annual basis. It might be more like a third or a quarter of what you get in years 1 through 8, something like that. But it really does depend on the market. So if the market's there, the credits can be sold and additional revenue can be generated. If the market's not there, you can continue to harvest timber, manage your property, do the things that you need to do with the property, and the Nature Conservancy is covering the expenses and making sure that we're meeting all the requirements of the carbon market during that time.
Anybody else?
I do have one more question, Dave. You provide services, forest certification, carbon credit, revenues and stuff like this. With some of that management, you have a tendency to push cost up on the people that own the property. I mean, what do you see the cost? Does that go up with the entities? I mean, would we have to be doing more than what we're doing now?
As far as like maintenance on the property and expenses that you're putting into it, there really shouldn't be. We are covering your upfront costs. If you need a forest management plan, the forest certification, all of that. The only potential thing that I could see is things like the forest certification. Say if your road network was in really bad shape and you were having erosion, that might sort of ding you on the certification, and there may be, you may be sort of compelled to do some maintenance or something on that road to make sure it's not washing out. Now, that to me is smart management on your property and something that you probably should be and probably are doing already. But that's the only kind of expense that I could see. They're really, we try to set this up specifically so that it's, it's not the sort of the barrier to the landowner to engaging in this process is really low as far as financial risk and upfront expenses and increased expenses over time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So if no one else has any questions, Gabe, we'd like to thank you for participating today and putting up with our technical problem there.
No problem. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate you accommodating my, technical needs here, and I'm quite a distance away, so I appreciate the opportunity to come in electronically here. And appreciate your interest in the program, and if there's any other follow-up, like I said, or questions, I'm happy to have follow-up conversations or anything that I can provide that's meaningful.
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Does he have a sample contract that he's shared with you?
I did see one at the NISAC meeting. It's, quite involved. I can get that, so we can take a look at it.
Just make sure what we're doing right.
Yeah.
Are they a 501c3 or something like that?
The Nature Conservancy, they probably are.
How far can you proceed? Get more information and stuff like that before it's kind of like the point of no return? You know?
Well, I don't think that they would take, I don't know, Jackie, I don't know if he talked about that second step where they would come and actually inventory our property. I don't know if they would do that without us having signed on, because that's a pretty big investment.
Okay.
But I can find that out, and Larry just asked too. I do remember seeing a sample contract that they showed at the NISAC seminar that was on this, so I'll see if I can get my hands on that as well, so we know what kind of provisions they have.
One time we were in the process of whether it happened or not. I'll have to ask Jack. This was, I believe, before you, about the change of times, we were going for the certification.
The tree farm.
Right. Have we got that certification? Or
We
did
have an umbrella one. It really wasn't done right. It should have been done for each parcel individually.
Okay.
Tree farm certification isn't the same as SFI or what he would like. There's a lot of hoops to jump through on any harvest with an SFI certification.
What do we,
And you get,
given your cost, what do we make with you?
We try to be a zero budget, so I think the proposal for next year was $75,000 harvest. Try to cover the insurance costs and
I think
singing waters.
since I've been here, we've had as low
It's
as
been
about
very
55
consistent.
and as high as like 90. So,
Yeah.
but we try to budget around 70. Is where we try to shoot.
Well, you still would be able to do timber sales
right.
going forward.
Yeah.
The question is, can you do them at the same level you're doing now and still maintain?
We're very conservative. My concern would be if there was an infestation or a dieback that we needed to take care of. Realistically, a dead tree doesn't have carbon, it shouldn't be an issue. But with the SFI certification, you're very restricted to your plan. If you have it planned to harvest that lot that year, you harvest that lot that year, whether your markets are good or not. So, it depends on if there is some flexibility within that. I don't know if SFI has changed since then, or if there's other programs besides SFI. And you never know what the carbon credit market's gonna do in 10 years. I mean, right now it's a big trend to go green, to have the carbon credit. Like you said, this is a voluntary market. People that are buying the credits don't have to.
right.
So we don't have enough acreage to be in the mandatory market.
And they get 10 years and then nothing after that.
Right, and they
Okay,
give you
put
a
you in
projection
bind.
for 10 years, but like you said, it could drop to half or a quarter.
Yeah.
Those
Well,
remaining years.
as we progress nationally towards renewable energy,
Right.
those carbon credits are gonna dry up. They're not gonna need them.
Yeah, who knows how long that'll
Those
take.
industries won't be here.
Right, I mean, they've been pushing carbon credits for the past 15 years.
Right.
not everybody's jumped on, but not everybody's had the acreage to jump on. A lot of the big management groups, they don't have enough acreage to jump on. So they have to do the voluntary market as well. They're doing their own voluntary market, not with the Nature Conservancy because they have their own staff, but you know, Nature Conservancy, I think some of the figures were up to 60% of the costs, you know, of what they get the return is, so.
Do we know what the private ones are offering?
We don't have we
Acreage.
don't have the volume of acreage to do
The large, okay.
on our own.
So
That's
my
why this
concerns
works
are
for municipals.
locking up a portion of a county asset for until, you know, the year 2060. That is something that's concerning to me. On the other hand of that is the revenue that we potentially make from this would make the land much more usable, and we can, you know, enhance recreation in the community, which has been a goal, you know, of this board for a long time. So you got to balance those two things, and it's hard. I think it's impossible to say what development will look like in 2050. So we've got to just understand that we're locking that land down, but in the meantime, we're going to be able to almost double, you know, the revenue that's coming into Jackie's budget for recreation, which is a good thing.
But there's no guarantee on when you'll get paid,
Huh?
you know, so there's nothing that you can say, well, this year we're gonna have this much in the budget. It's gonna be a wait and see, and oh, they sold some, so we got a check coming in. You know, so you almost have to like bank it for the following year or whatever.
As long as it's a contract and not a true easement, it'd be a lot more comfortable. True easement, you know, that's.
But I think the way he talked, because the way the
That's
law
what they do with
is
the
on
private
the
land.
classification of
Right.
land, it would not be needed.
Yeah.
That would be more for a private landowner that had a lot of acreage that wanted to get in on it.
So we wanted to bring it forward just to start the discussion to see if there's interest in us pursuing it. Jackie and I can pursue a little bit further, ask some more detailed questions of Dave, and also I'll try to get some of the more detail on what counties they've actually engaged with so far and what kind of contracts they've entered into, so
It'd
we
be
have
nice to
some
talk
more.
to some of the counties that have actually signed
Yeah.
to see.
Does anybody have an idea, like with the carbon credits that we would generate off this reforestation? I mean, is it certain trees have more, or?
You sequester more carbon in smaller trees. Older trees will not sequester as much on a yearly basis.
And I think the
because
type of
growth
tree
slows
also.
as you grow.
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't it the type of tree
Yes.
also?
Species varies.
What is a good species?
Hardwoods.
We have mostly southern.
Yeah.
Right. No,
But they're still developing carbon
Oh, yeah, but
in
I'm just
those
saying,
other trees, right?
I thought the answer was hardwood.
Yeah. They're,
Yeah, the
they're
denser,
more, there's
the
more
denser.
volume,
Yeah.
more weight. But we can look into it more and, you know, do another presentation after the fact if we'd
Yeah,
like.
that's the trade-off.
I thought it's worth following up, but the devil's in the details. Let's get a contract and find out what.
And somebody that's been in it for
Get more information, yeah.
So the sample contract, and see if we can talk to a county
Any
that's,
counties that
it
have
might not
signed
be
up.
a county in New York State, but we can find a community that's
Right.
done this, and try to, maybe we can get someone from there to present to the, you know, talk to the board.
Nope.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, 500,000 is a good figure, but if that's all you're gonna see over 40 years, you might wanna think about it differently.
Yeah, but, you know, yeah, like Ryan said, you have to balance that, because what else are we doing with those properties? We can't do anything other than to keep them as forests and maybe, and, you know, get the timber from them and have some trails on them. So, it's a balance.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. Right now, he's right, and Jackie's right. We can't, by law, we're tied to this property.
Right.
But laws change all the time. You know, who knows what 2040 is going to look like, 2050.
Yeah, but it's also paying for itself just the way it's set.
Yeah.
What we put out in taxes, that's what the original cutting was, to make enough to pay the taxes that go to the school districts and the towns.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's serving its purpose, essentially, it's costing us nothing. Yeah, I'd like more information.
Okay.
Anybody got any other questions?
Me.
Okay, go ahead and do that.
The first docket is resolution authorizing modification agreement between the County of Lewis and Evans Caulking to provide additional work on retaining wall for the old courthouse building at a cost not to exceed $8,500.
Any questions or discussions? Yeah, one question. What retaining wall I'm talking about was out here?
The one at the front entrance that was built as part of the new building, that's in pretty rough shape. There's some salt erosion around the base, and the way that the top was built, water drips down onto the top. Didn't we talk about this one time?
Yeah.
So we had the mortar guys here that was doing the tuck pointing for our building and the PSP. And we said, hey, Matt had a good idea. He said, as long as you're here, why don't you quote us to see what that wall would be? And they gave us a number, and we thought it was high, frankly. And so we got another couple other quotes, and they came in similar. So as long as they're here, we figured either we have them do it now for $8,500, or we're bringing somebody back in 5-6 years.
Is that caulk or is that mortar?
It's mortar, yeah.
Well, why are we putting caulk?
We're not. That's just the name of the company, Evans Caulking. They'll do
Tuck point.
tuck point, yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Matt, did I get that right?
It actually is, the majority of it will be mortar, but the very top of the cap of the wall will be caulking to hold up better to the weather.
Okay.
So our thought was we either do it now for 85 or we rebuild the whole thing in 6-7 years, so.
Yeah, well, it's, we gotta do something to try to protect it, save it. Any other questions? Everybody good with it? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay.
Thanks, I had one thing on that. Our budget for the tuck pointing that we put in the 2020 budget was like 120,000, and the whole project only came in to bid at like 70 or, yeah. So that's why we thought we'd throw it in, because we already had the money set aside and we didn't use it. So.
We'll have to cut it down next year, so you don't, because you're gonna spend it once you got it.
Well, we still save 50 grand.
This next one is resolution to transfer funds in the county road accounts in the amount of $4,894 for the net difference of a trading allowance on the purchase of 2020 equipment.
Okay, any questions or discussions?
Warren, can you explain this? I know you told it to me, but I can't remember.
Right. They had a grapple bucket that was available after we purchased the machine for picking up logs and trees during blowdown times. We thought it would be a lot safer for the guys rather than trying to buck up trees and then scoop it up with a bucket and trying to chain them into the back of the truck. This bucket looks like a log bucket. Fingers pinch right onto the log, and the trees pick them right up, and you'll have more control of it. They'll put it in the back of the truck so get them out of the roadway. So we had one bucket. I think it was a 6-inch bucket we didn't need. We were swapping that back in for the difference. So it was like 40.
Yeah. So this is the difference between, instead of getting the second bucket that you didn't feel that we needed, getting the claw
Right.
instead.
Right.
This is the difference.
And they just didn't have it in their budget. Where's this money coming from?
This is coming from contingency, or, hold
No,
on.
they're moving from another
No,
line.
it's from, yeah.
Paving. They're moving from another line item in the budget.
Okay, it's within their budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all part of our CHIPS plan, since it's coming from, I'm sure, the county road paving portion, as we're not doing paving, so we decided to get our equipment instead, but we didn't have enough moved over for that, so.
In favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried.
Resolution to appropriate trust funds in the district attorney accounts in the amount of $1,635 for reimbursement of 2020 DA prosecution expenses.
He didn't prosecute anybody.
I was gonna say, the court got shut down.
So this is one of the forfeiture transfers that the district attorney has leeway to spend funds that have been confiscated through criminal confiscation. She has the ability to spend those at her discretion. Is that right there?
Correct.
So she's putting it back in. Good. Any questions or discussions other than that? All in favor, aye?
Excuse me, I have one question, Jerry, I'm sorry. Who's getting reimbursed here? County or the DA's office?
Eric, can you answer that?
It's going to be used for another purchase in the DA's office. So they're using funds that they've received from forfeitures, and they're going to be using for expenses in their department.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
There's no money exception here.
Okay. You get that? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay? Good. Carried.
Resolution approving budget transfer from contingency funds to the coroner accounts in the amount of $7,840 for increased activity and related expenses.
How many more have we done since we paid the last bill? That's 3 or 4.
I don't recall.
I don't know the number they've done. They've got $4,000 to $5,000 of additional expenses since she last came to your group. So what this resolution does is it gives them about $4,000 or $5,000 extra on top of what their current expenses are, so that they can cover more in the next few months.
Okay. Any questions or discussions?
This is a separate department from the DA's office, right?
Technically in the budget it's separate, but in terms of personnel, it's all the same.
That's
She's the coroner, you're fine.
Okay, yeah.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay.
Resolution appropriating FY 2020 New York State Homeland Security Program funds in the emergency management accounts in the amount of $52,504 for the purchase of various equipment and professional services.
Did you get a list ever, Ryan, of what we were buying?
No, but we have a very detailed inventory of all the federal dollars that Bob can email out.
Yeah.
I didn't make a note last time, I was supposed to do
We
that.
used to
sorry.
ask for a list.
Yeah.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carried.
Resolution to appropriate state grant funds in the Stop DWI accounts in the amount of $14,972 for 2020 crackdown expenses.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor, aye? Opposed, nay?
Resolution to appropriate funds in the youth program accounts in the amount of $5,000 for school resource officer training.
Okay, the school resource officer training, youth program, I thought that used to go to sports.
Youth program is different from youth bureau. There's funding that's available for SRO training, is that right? So,
Okay. Any questions or discussions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolution authorizing the chairman of the board to execute any and all annual agreements between the County of Lewis by and through the planning department and entities who lease advertising space on a Lewis County public transportation bus or bus stop shelter in accordance with the described space and annual rental fee schedule.
Any questions or discussions?
These rates are all annual, right?
Yes, they are. They haven't changed in the last 2 years.
Any other questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution authorizing renewal agreement between the County of Lewis and the Flack Broadcasting Group for advertisements on the radio stations WBRV, The Moose, and WLLC, The Blizzard, to serve and promote public transportation services throughout Lewis County at a cost not to exceed $2,000 for the term commencing January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
Any questions or discussion?
I know we have a bunch of these. How effective have they been, the advertising? I've seen them done in years past.
They've done, it's kind of like getting out the bus is picked up. I don't know if there's anybody here from, there she is. The ridership seems to keep growing, and I think this is kind of a reminder. Can you?
Yep, they give us the advertising space, and then they also allow me to go in and do pro bono updates on our systems, depending on what season it is for Old Forge transportation, or there's a change in GCC transportation, and they've been really good with us on the COVID pandemic to get information out. Yep. We're just trying to get ahead of the game with all these 2021.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution authorizing renewal agreements between the County of Lewis and Spectrum Reach for a digital audience network campaign and for cable TV commercial ads designed to serve and promote public transportation services throughout Lewis County at a cost not to exceed $3,600 for digital audience network campaign and $5,102 for cable TV commercial ads campaign for the term commencing January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
Questions or discussion?
What's a digital audience network?
Geofencing.
Pardon me?
Geofencing. So if you if you're cruising through your phone like you do on Facebook or something, or if you're looking up something, it'll come up, our advertisement will come up if you're in a certain radius of that blip.
Thanks.
Then you can click on it and it will go to either our Facebook or our website. Geofencing.
That's a technology that's had a lot, right?
That's why I didn't even listen.
I didn't know either.
You're learning. I'm used to chiseling stones. Any other questions?
Yeah, this money will be in the 2021 budget. It's been the 2021 money.
Which one are you on?
10.
Advertising budgets. Advertising budgets for digital marketing.
Yeah, we'll book when Cassie does her budget, which actually we already met, we'll book that revenue in 2021.
Any other questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay.
Resolution authorizing renewal agreement between the County of Lewis and WWNY 7 News / Fox 28 for an integrated media plan designed to promote and serve the Lewis County public transportation system at a cost not to exceed $20,853 for the term commencing January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Resolution authorizing an agreement between the County of Lewis and WWTI Watertown ABC 50 for an integrated media plan designed to promote and serve the Lewis County public transportation system at a cost not to exceed $9,468 for the term commencing January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
Questions?
What is this total? We just approved a whole bunch of these.
About 37,000, quit our mind on this.
So that's about $37,000 to try to promote ridership on our public transportation. Is that a reasonable amount? Or?
It's similar to what we did last year, yes, and the year before.
We're
So I
getting
keep
our
it,
bang for the buck, that's my question.
yes,
Okay.
yes, and it's also fully reimbursable from state and federal.
There we go.
Starting with that one, that was unfair.
Fully covered.
Can you move these along?
Our transportation plan has to be approved by the
That's it.
state, and so they're approving our plan with this promotional expenses.
Good answer.
Hooray, hooray.
We're spending other people's money, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
As soon as I send him a check, it'll be part of mine.
This is coming from Andy Cuomo.
Yeah. Before does he get his?
Trump.
Is there any other questions? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Resolution to amend the compensation plan with reference to the Sheriff's Department to abolish a permanent full-time jail nurse at a salary grade 34 and create a permanent full-time jail nurse at a salary grade 35, and to authorize a MOA between the county and CSEA with respect to the grade change in compensation.
So we've struggled to recruit this jail nurse now for over a year. Nurses that are working in hospital settings are making significantly more than what we're offering at grade 34. We did have a candidate that was, after I think our third posting, willing to come on board with us this spring. And then when they found out they had to start at the beginning of the grade and not, somewhere in the middle, they were hoping they could negotiate, but with unions we don't. They backed away from the position. So right now we have a contract with a physician's assistant that's working with Dr. Rosner to come in and cover, but that's obviously not a long-term solution. So we're hoping that by increasing the grade, maybe we can attract somebody to come in and be there with us full-time. So that's where we're at with that position. The CSEA obviously was okay with it, but it is, in addition to their contract, which means we would need a memorandum of agreement with them.
And this would be
Every day.
Was that one?
But
8 hours a day, every day? Actually, it's not.
7 hours, I think.
Isn't it Monday through Friday? Or is it
Monday through Friday, 7 hours. It's a 35-hour work week.
35-hour work week.
Yeah.
What happens on the weekends? Who covers them?
So this is to administer dailies, my understanding, and then I believe like meds and things, and they have coverage, they have like on-call, and what Dr. Rosner, they fill in and have individuals help. Sometimes the schedule does need to change, so if someone does need to take daily medicine that can be only administered, my understanding is maybe they schedule it accordingly.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
No.
All in favor, aye? Opposed, nay? The only,
We have one more. Resolution authorizing a 4-month agreement with Aviat Networks to provide the provision support services as set forth in its proposal dated August 14th, 2020, at a cost not to exceed $2,373 for the term September 15th, 2020 through January 31st, 2021. This is 100% funded by the 911 radio grant.
yeah, that's our microwave person. Any questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye? Opposed, nay? Okay, the only other thing is, did have a question, we're having an executive session later on with another committee, and we'll bring up the question we had for this committee in there.
We have motions.
Yeah, there's motions.
Huh?
We have two motions. after
There's
the docket.
motions.
The first one is a motion to authorize Highway Superintendent Warren Shaw to refill a mechanic welder position effective immediately due to resignation.
Andrea, second? Or discussion?
Need a second.
Ron? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Carried.
Then we got a couple more late resolutions too.
Nope, there was only one for general services.
I think those,
Oh, okay.
they belong to another committee.
Yeah.
The next motion is to authorize Solid Waste Director Kip Turk to refill a MEO position and all associated backfills effective immediately due to resignation.
Okay, we have a motion. Andrea? We have a second? Ron? Raise your hand quicker. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That's all I had.
Okay, well, that's good. Anyways, we got an executive session coming up, and we'll discuss one of the things we had in executive session for
Which
this
would be
committee.
for a negotiated contract and what enforcement mechanisms we might have.
And then the other thing, I was talking to Cheryl and the sheriff. We need to start thinking about our radio project again. Some of the rules and regulations we have as far as sending our frequencies and stuff out. So in the next month or two, we will probably be getting something from the sheriff, Cheryl, as far as recommendations, what we ought to put in our standard operating procedure, so we may have to make a meeting on that. So, other than that, that's all I have, unless anybody else have anything for the committee. Want to make a motion?
Move to move into executive session.
No, adjourn.
Oh, adjourn.
We have a second?
I'll second.
This time. We're gonna have to move Ron somewhere else.